Hey, what's going on, guys? Hey, today we're going to dive into some of the hardest but most important lessons for leaders, teams, and really anyone that's trying to forge a better version of themselves. We're gonna talk about discomfort as a leadership tool, why you're a reflection of your habits, not just your goals, the power of adapting and overcoming, and the mindset you must have when fear stands in your way. It's truly about choosing, is your experience a coffin or a classroom? And these discussions I think are going to be super awesome, and I'm super excited to talk about it today with my teammate Gavin, who you guys already all know really well. So I think we should just go ahead and dive into it, man. With the first thing, trying to make these compact and quick and easy to listen to. But I think with the first thing we should talk about is like why discomfort is a leadership tool. I think we both know that discomfort leads to growth in many different aspects. And something we've always said for a long time is, hey, if you're too comfortable, you're coasting. Um, and I think you got tons of examples of that. I mean, especially everything you've been through.
Yeah, I mean, first thing that comes to mind too, just talking about discomfort. I think one, it's kind of like a validation, because you think about the leaders you've been exposed to in your life, and I know that, that's a big thing is like, hey, if they haven't been through something, like what's the thing that kind of validated them, when they start talking, are they like, have they walked the walk that they're talking? And I think the main thing that you get to is that discomfort kind of, and self leadership. And I feel like with self leadership in general, if you don't have some sort of discomfort that you've experienced, it's really hard to kind of bring out the best in you. So it's there's a lot to dive in with that for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's always just feel like you've never arrived. Like never resting on all your past successes and only staying with what you're comfortable with. I mean, that's what I did for a really long time, and that's how I skated by until it just didn't work anymore. Um, which was a great thing because it consistently now I'm consistently seeking ways. And we talked about it this morning too, right? Signing up for the JFK 50, possibly doing a marathon like before, and like yeah, those are physical goals, but then also like work goals, like my professional life that I have like outside of this is just consistently trying to push the envelope and get outside my comfort zone. That way you can grow. You know what I mean? Like accept criticism.
Yeah, and it has a lot to do with your environment. And that was another thing we were talking about too earlier. Like a lot of it goes to your environment. Like even let's say if you haven't really experienced that discomfort, and you've developed that strong like sense of self leadership, um, you can kind of become a product of your environment. Like if you're around the most motivated individuals that you've ever been around, it's kind of easy. And what's easier really, to kind of develop into that. But it's like when you're placed in an environment where maybe, that's not the case. You don't really have motivated individuals, people that aren't on the same level, they don't have the same goals as you. It makes it tough, and it kind of makes it maybe it adds another level of discomfort, where it's then you really got to stick to your guns. You got to stick to, fall back to, and everybody says, fall back to the level of training, or fall back to your level of discomfort, I guess. There's a couple different ways. People don't rise to the level of their goals; they fall to the level of the systems they have in place. So that's one thing I for sure think is, you could probably think of like the most motivated group that you've ever been around in your life. Like that's not like an everyday thing. I think about like, spending 4 years in a Division I wrestling room. Like I also know that I'm probably never again in my life going to be in an environment of people that are that motivated and have like that level of drive. But it's like what I've taken from that is something that I'm hopefully gonna, I'm gonna hold on to for the rest of my life. I'm gonna be able to take that into whatever environment that I'm stepping into, whether that level of motivation is matched or it's not, because likely most of the time it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, and if it's not, I mean, obviously you know me for a long time, right? Even the worst of situations, like I'm always trying to always smile and like it's I've been told it's even annoying, right? Like how much energy and like output I'll have. And
Hell yeah, it's annoying. I've lived that. Ask Mac or Ken or anybody else on here.
but it's like
No, it's good though.
you, you gotta whatever your standard is for yourself, right? Like I'm okay being vulnerable now. I'm okay putting myself out there, and I want people around me. I want to bring up other people around me. I want to help them get uncomfortable and find discomfort in growing. Uh, and the crazy thing is even though it is annoying, I mean, there's people that won't do it, but then there's guys like you and the rest of y'all that are like, all right, man, I guess I'm gonna do it, you know. And you kind of just start building out your tribe and growing together. And like the marathon that we all did together, what, a year ago? Just over a year ago, was
Yeah.
a perfect example of that. I mean, I think you off the bat said yes. The other two were like, hell no. And then it was funny because then both of them crossed the finish line, you know?
Yeah, and it was like if it wasn't for Ken, who knows where I would have been on that. I mean, that was a huge thing for me. Like, especially, it was like almost 11 months to the day post hip surgery. Like, there's definitely a spiritual level of that to me. But something that I thought of too. I've been thinking about it for a little while. Is like you do get annoyed like kind of with that, and you see people that have that like that are like super motivated all the time. Um, and it's one thing I thought about is like I always thought like growing up, especially like going through high school, I truly like believed that I'm like nobody else in the world, in the state, whatever at the time, for reference, is working harder than me. Like I want to meet the person that's worked harder than me. Like, yeah, okay, from a sports setting, like maybe I don't go out there and win. Maybe I didn't win, but like, my goal is to make it that like, okay, that person never wanted to compete with me again. And you try to let that drive you. That'll go kind of back into that, how you brought up at the beginning, the coffin or classroom. But like then you get into a whole new environment and you get humbled and you're like, oh, well, maybe I'm not the hardest worker. Maybe I there's a whole other level to this, that haven't delved into, but it's just a constant work in progress. Like the moment you think you've arrived, just like you said, like that's a false sense of security because,
Yeah. And,
you
and
know,
the stuff that we've mentioned is physical stuff, right? Like that's okay though. Like those are just examples because those things where you had to go out and you had to put the practice into work, right? Or you had to go ahead and put everything into action. You were going to find out very quickly whether you made it or not. And I think, whether it's running or I could definitely say for wrestling, right? Like we went out to Bellarmine and getting out on the mat with those kids and just, like they're whatever way you want to say it, right? But like their vision of us was like, oh my gosh, these guys were in the army, they've done X, Y, and Z and all this stuff. But us being humbled enough to go out there and get my ass whooped over and over, you know, and like it was definitely uncomfortable. You know what I mean? But it,
oh yeah, I found myself on my back. I remember that. Oh yeah, I was like, I'm a few years removed, but I still might be able to roll with these guys. Yeah, I found out quick that how out of shape and washed up I am.
yeah. But no, I think that those are spot on, right? Especially with what you're talking about with wrestling, like figuring out that you aren't the hardest worker. It's not, it is what it is. It is what
There's
it is.
levels to it. There's levels to every game. Um, you meet the Joes or whoever it is you've come across and that talk the talk, but grabbing that mic and getting on that stage, that's a
Yeah.
different thing. Or they're say, oh, I did this or that. And you find out it can be disrespectful almost sometimes because it's like, all right, well, they're kind of downgrading the work and the kind of the everything you went through and the work that you put in, to get to that spot. And then it's like, all right, now let's put our money where our mouth is.
Yeah, which brings in a really good point of you're a reflection of your habits, not your goals. And, you know, goals without habits or dreams, and daily habits create disciplined leaders. And there was a quote that came out that I think we've all heard, right? People don't rise to the level of their goals, they fall to the level of their systems, like you said, or fall
Yeah.
to the level of their training. And we see it. I mean, whether it's the example, sadly, right, is like scenarios and tragic things that happen like around the world, especially in today's age. You'll get people that pull out their phone, right, and they'll be recording things that are going on. But after the incident, you'll have a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks. You could pick that at anything, right? It could be the NFL. It could be pick pick whatever it is, right? Everyone's always going to Monday morning quarterback and say, well, if I was there, I would have done this. But if they ever find
Your
themselves in,
Sanders should have went in the first round and got
yeah,
drafted.
yeah, yeah, and but I would argue that when those things happen, they a lot of people think they're going to rise to. I'm going to rise to the occasion. No, you're not, man. Like you're really not. And I'm just going to tell you that right now. Like, you know,
Yeah, I thought of another quote too, hearing that, and to quote Billy Bob Thornton in Bad Santa, wish in one hand, shit in the other, see which one fills up first. It's which is hilarious and kind of dark, but I mean I think it kind of goes with that is like it's good to set goals, and now to completely go in a different direction with it. Talking to my pastor, not quite the bad Santa analogy, but he talks about it's good to set goals, it's good to have those aspirations and dreams, but you got to keep an open hand about it because what happens if that doesn't happen? If you come up short with it, are you going to be in that coffin, or is it going to be a classroom experience type for you? And I've experienced, both of us have, but I mean, you know as well. I've experienced that quite a bit. I've had that feeling. I've let it become a coffin, but um, I've also been in the classroom for quite a bit too. So it's a fine line. It's just kind of how it goes.
yeah. Well, since we keep mentioning it, I think we should talk about it. And it's crazy because that's something we just heard the other day, right? It was actually
Yeah.
something that we saw on social media, and I had never heard it referenced like that. Um, but those things that you face, more they were more talking about failures. You're either going to let it define who you are, and you're going to lay in a coffin with it and be done, or you're going to put yourself in the classroom and learn and see how you could have gotten better, which goes back to what you just said too, right? What are your goals that you want to lay out that are there, right? Like, what do you want to get to, and what habits are you going to put in place? Whether it's physical, mental, emotional, maybe it's educationally. I mean, there's countless stories out there of people that are really just putting in the work. Like, hey, I need to get a degree to be able to go do X job to take care of my family. These are the disciplines that I have to put in place because the goals without habits are just dreams. And in today's age, far too often with squirrel brain, and we all have it, social media,
Oh yeah.
like we see an end product in 15 seconds. Or, like when my kids will sit down and watch this Justin Flom, right? He's a guy that like does a whole bunch of decorative stuff inside, sketches and different projects. And in a 30-second span, you'll see something that would have taken him hours, right? Like, and we always want that instantaneous feedback, whatever that is, right? Shooting, fitness, whatever. And we've both met people that, hey, I want to do that, and they try to implement a habit, and they realize it's going to take more than just writing it down on a piece of paper. It's going to take showing up day after day after day and just getting after it. Again, there's no excuse for hard work. You're not going to get around it.
Yeah, I mean, and we live in a world of instant gratification. It's like
Yeah.
you want that right now, and I think, our media that we consume plays a big role in that. Um, Something that I've been thinking about too a lot, especially like in the topic of self-leadership and um, and overcoming hardship and is facing temptation. Like I think a lot of what goes into self-leadership and having, getting to a different level is how do you face temptation? Like, how do you react to that? Because that's the stuff that it's easier to put it on in front of everyone, in front of a group or whatever. If you're, if you're doing a presentation or whatever it is, you're trying to look good in front of the boss. But it's like what you're doing when no one's watching is like that's in your face with all the different temptations. And like if you're actually going to work on building those habits, or are you going to skate here and there? Because that's the thing. It gets exposed then on whatever stage you're going for, whatever it is. If it's a, you know, name the event. If it's a sporting event, or if it's a selection type um, event, it's that stuff will all get exposed because you chose to give in to personal temptations, whatever that is, and instead of building that strong base for yourself.
Yeah, I think it's okay to slip, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Everyone needs a reset. Everybody needs a slip. You guys tell me that all the time, right?
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Uh, what was the thing you said the other day? When I
Oh,
can't
it could
remember.
be anything.
Yeah, but it was like something about, hey, you asked me to do something, or I was like, hey, I can't upload it. My service is really bad. And you're like, yeah. All you replied back, I was like, hey, I can't. My service isn't good right now. And you're like, yeah, we get it. Okay, going to coaching, shopping, going over here to cook, right? Like,
Yeah, I got to go do adult soccer. I got to
yeah,
coach softball, then go to football, and then yeah, I love it. I got to do
yeah,
3 episodes today, and then I actually got to do my job. I forgot about that part.
yeah. But you're.
Oh, and then I
It's
got to be a husband too and a father
yeah,
on the
right,
back
yeah,
burner.
yeah. And like, what habits are you putting in place to do that? I would say for me, the thing I'm really balancing now is the husband and dad piece. Um, a year ago, I mean, don't get me wrong, right? I'm all in on this, right? But I have backed off and significantly put in less time to this because a year ago, I mean, I was going all day, all night, and it got to a point that like a quote from Denzel Washington, "Man, you can run, but it doesn't mean you're going anywhere." Right? You were running in place while things were getting built and it was going right. I was just doing work, but work wasn't leading to anything, and everything else fell by the wayside. And I kept saying like, "Hey, my goal is to be a present dad. My goal is to be, you know, there for my wife. Like, oh, I'm coaching, so that means I'm kind of there." But when my wife would tell me like, "Hey, I need X, Y, and Z to feel like you're a present husband," I had to build those disciplines in and reprioritize and look, um, and say, okay, like if this is the end goal I want to get to, this is how much time I'm going to be able to dedicate to everything, and it'll be all right. And having the right people around you, right? And if you don't have the right people around you, then it's even more on you. And it goes back to what you said about temptation, not giving into what everybody else thinks you need to do. Only you know your goals. I used to love that question in a promotion board. People would freak out and they'd say, "Tell me about yourself." And,
Uh,
like,
I
dude,
care
nobody
too
knows.
much. That's my biggest weakness. I
Yeah,
just
no,
care too freaking much.
yeah, nobody knows you better than you. Um, yeah, and I mean, yeah, no, 100%, man. I mean,
Something you said that, uh, man, I struggle with it a ton is like the humility of like when somebody tells you like your wife telling you that like, hey, this is what I need from you, and you feel like you are, and you feel like maybe the work you're doing is going unnoticed. Like I think that's something that everybody struggles with. Like you're doing this, and it's like maybe you're not doing it to what their vision of is, but like in your head, that's you're fulfilling that, and you're going into that, and then you get hit with like this course correction, and it's they need this from you, or like and then it just completely throws you off, and then that can it can lead to anger, it can lead to resentment and different things like that. And I feel like you've hit kind of a new level when you're able to not take it so personally, and you're able to sit back and just be like, okay, no, that's good, like thank you for thank you for letting me know that. And no, I mean, that's I can think of many times like I mean, just the other week, whenever I called you, I wanted to buy a new vehicle, and you're like, going into the reasons why that would be really stupid, and it would have absolutely been really stupid for me to do. And then I kind of sat back and got the other perspective, and like I felt really good about it. I was like, oh no, you're right. It wouldn't have made any sense to do that. It just having that patience and being comfortable with being able to wait a little bit, because that's what we hate doing, and it goes back to the instant gratification. We want that instant, like I want it right now. Like, I don't want to wait around, especially if you've been in a season of waiting. Like, we've talked about this with, wanting, looking for opportunities and things of that nature. And it's like, man, like when is this, how long we got to wait to do this? What else, what else are people looking for? So that's kind of, I'm kind of rambling on with that a little bit, but I feel like that is such a huge quality. It's like not being able to take things personally, and like being able to just sit back and I don't think empathy is the word, but just it's humility. Just being able to clothe yourself in humility is such a huge strength, and it goes into everything that we're talking about with building those habits.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe some would classify what you talked about, especially with your spouse or significant other, of like fear, right? Like
Mm.
I am here, right? I cooked dinner, or I helped out, or I go to work all day, I provide. Like that may not be what they're looking for. And it might be uncomfortable for you, and you have to look at that self-leadership and that humility, and maybe some are fearful to admit that they're wrong, right? Everybody views things in a different light. You're going to see things differently than I do. You know, your spouse or your soon to be spouse is going to see things differently than you do. And just accept it. Like change is okay. You know, there's no way that my wife and I are the same people we were 17 years ago. You know what I mean? Like if we
Yeah.
never changed who we are, I don't even want to know what we'd be like. You know, like,
That's a good point.
I mean, yeah, and just overcoming that. Um, which brings up a good point about fear too, is I think overall, a lot of people, and I know I did for a long time, steer away from things that you're fearful of, right? Whether it's failing a selection, whether it's accepting trauma, whether it's whatever it is, right? Hard discussions with family, like fearful of like what that's going to turn into, because I just don't want to deal with it. It's easier. I have learned from my own personal self that it's easier to just own it, right? And move through it. Like it's okay. A lot of these things, now we've had these discussions, like aren't life or death decisions, but we act like they are. And we move through life so fast, trying to do everything we can do. And the thing I always like to say is for a long time, I forgot to look up and realize that the sky was blue. I actually did that today. I had a doctor's appointment, and I went, had to get to work this morning, had stuff to do, went and worked out, boom, had to go to this appointment. And like, I literally walked out of there and realized like I had just been paying attention to what was in front of me all day. And I walked out of the front door and just looked up. I was like, oh man, it's actually a really nice day out. But the fact that it took me from 5 o'clock this morning, it took me 5 hours. I realized that at 10 o'clock is just, I realized like I needed a reset, you know? Um, yeah.
Yeah, I had a really good talk with Mac the other day too, which, anybody listening to this, they know Mac, one of our teammates. Love that guy.
MacDo.
That's right. He died, he went to him.
Well, hey, so context. I think we should get context. So we were on a team call a while back, right? It was all of us. We're all discussing like the upcoming course that we're gonna run, and Mac was driving and had his phone set up in the corner, and he's
His
like,
Android.
yeah, he's got the T maybe, right, and it kept
Yep.
er, er, just kept
Virgin
cutting out, and
Mobile.
then it just said call drop, and I don't know what came over me, but I mentally was like, oh. Meg, yep, he died. He went to heaven.
He's like, I'm back.
uh,
But
yeah.
he was like we were talking about, and I was telling him some personal stuff, like just and it was about fear, like just fear of the unknown, and different things I've been dealing with over the last 2+ years, and dude, it was so simple, like it was so simplified, like he's like, you need to look at it, like look up in the sky, and you're looking at a cloud, and you can't touch these fears. Like it's not something tangible. It's like it's literally something living in your mind. It might be something real, but it's like not something like it's completely out of your control. Something that you can't control. And he's like, you need to look at it as a cloud passing in the air, like passing in the wind. Like it's there for a moment and it passes on. I mean, it's like but a blade of grass in this whole scheme of things. And it just, I don't know, as mindfulness, if you want to call it that. I mean, I think it would classify as like, kind of a mindful practice. But I mean, I don't know, it filled me with a peace and like a calm. And it was like, hey, that's when you start feeling like that, you just look at that and like, look at that cloud in the sky. Like it's there, but for a moment. And then, it's gone right after that. The wind just passes it through and there's clear skies again.
Well, the blade of grass analogy is really good too. I mean, I don't know how many times we heard that told to us. Uh, you, like you'll have something in front of you that just seems so big, so large, it's just hanging over your head. And for us, I mean, people that are listening, it was when we were in a school and they kept talking about Ranger School. That's all everybody talked about. Which, I mean, when you think back on it, that's all people, instructors and everything talked about, right? It was just Ranger School, Ranger School. And guys like put it on this massive pedestal. And somebody came in and was like, "You guys are so worried about a 62-day course. Think about a a field of grass that's your entire life. Ranger School is one blade. That's it. It is one small thing in your entire life." Um, and I know it's easier said than done to step back and look at life and look at your problem like that, or look at it like a cloud. But that's what it does take. And I mean, bringing it back to like self leadership, right? Humbling, being able to know that, hey, I need to adjust now. Um, you can say you want to lead people all day long and you can go to work and do those things, but if you can't lead yourself and set habits and goals and things that are attainable, small wins, um, eventually you're going to run out of steam.
Yeah, you're absolutely I mean, that's what's gonna happen. And, you know, it's especially if you're like chasing perfection because, that you might have your version of perfection, but you're never going to arrive. You're never going to achieve that perfection, that level of, true perfection. There was, um, man, one of our buddies told me a quote. He was talking about like, I don't really know how it applies to it. He said the definition of resilience is, you know, dealing with like the kind of the regrets of your failures, which is an easy one. You always think, oh man, if I could, like, what if I did that? If I would have done this instead of that. And then, but he's like, also, it's like living with your successes, because then you immediately go into like, oh, I could have done that better. Like, what if which isn't a bad thing, it's not always a bad thing. It can be a bad thing though. And it's like, oh, if I would have done this, I could have been up here instead of there. Um, I
You're
could have,
fearful of it. Well, I
yeah,
don't. Maybe fear is not the right word, but I'm going to use it in this context. Yeah, I'm going to cut you up. It was one of the things that got told to me today, and I wrote it down. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain.
that's deep.
Yeah, somebody at work sent me that today.
That's deep. And yeah, no, that's good. I mean, a lot of truth to it. I mean, you look at it too from, you look at it from a spiritual perspective too. Like they talk about, a certain level of fear is actually sinful, because like you're not living in any, you have no trust in the promises that have been given to you. If you live in that, and I mean all the other terrible things that happen to you when you live in that mindset or you live in that coffin, you can't move on past that. You dig yourself such a deep hole that you can't get out of that. And then if you don't have that circle of people that you've surrounded yourself with, then it can almost be unrecoverable at times. And I think all of us have been really fortunate because we've sought that out. We've sought that out because I've I've found, maybe I'm fortunate at like this stage of my life that I've figured that out for a relatively early point, that like we don't do this alone. Like nothing you do is completely alone. You're not going to figure it out on your own. You have to hitch your wagon to other people who are on the same mission as you. Um, and that's I think we've been able to figure that out kind of, and keep seeking those types of people out. And we've had a lot of people on this show that have that have dealt with the same exact thing, and through vulnerability, through um, humility, they've realized that it's not a one man show with anything.
Yeah, and for people that don't have that, right, don't have the like-minded people or don't have like a tribe, I would challenge them to just reach out. Okay, reach out to us, right? Reach out to anybody. If you're scrolling social media, you would be surprised how many people get back. We say that from experience in the last year, being like, these people will never get a hold of us, and we send them a message or find a way to get a hold of them, and like they're like, oh yeah, let's talk, and you're like, damn man, like they're we're all just regular people. We just have different experiences, right, that we bring to the table.
Yeah, I know that's very true. You think like, oh, look, why would they? And it kind of too goes to we were talking about this before the call, like well, it was like the never arriving too, but then thinking like you didn't do enough or something. Like you'll see something, you'll see this person that did all this, and then and I've been listening to a few other podcasts where that was like a hot topic about that, is like people reaching out to these guys and being like, you know, I didn't do what you did, but and then it's like the you know good leaders, like they'll stop you right there, like after you say that, and be like, no, like don't discredit what you went through. Like everybody has their own story, and your story is powerful. And we talk about this all the time, and I love it because it's like someone out there is living your story. And if you're going through all this and you're figuring it out just to keep it to yourself, like what did you go for? What did you go through it for? Because if you can't pass that along to that next person or that next generation, the people that need you, then they're probably going to be doomed to make a lot of the same mistakes you did whenever you kind of had the cheat sheet for them, I guess, if you will. And they're still
Yeah,
going
and
to have
you're
to
not.
figure it out and build those
Yeah,
habits and
yeah, you're
go
not
through
like,
that.
just because you give them we'll use the term cheat sheet, right? Just because you give them some lessons learned or a cheat sheet does not mean the outcome is going to be the same as yours. You know what I mean?
No,
Like, and yeah, like I would challenge people to ask this question: are you living in a coffin or a classroom? Are you? I mean, members of my own family have been living in a coffin for a very long time because they refuse to accept the fact that they can learn from the mistake. They refuse to accept it. Like there's no learning from it. That's where I was in life, and that's where I'm stuck. And I hate that because so many thoughts come to my mind about your, from this is me speaking. You just sound extremely unresilient. You sound extremely undisciplined. Like,
those were the cards I was dealt.
yeah, and I know you get it, right? I know you have people, that that are the same way. Like, stop crying about it. And the sad thing is you see all these stories all the time of people when they're getting near to the end of their life and they have all these regrets. And the regret is typically like, I stayed in that point for so long. Like, I would argue it goes back to finding discomfort. It's going to be uncomfortable to come out of there, because if you lay in that coffin and in those times of failure or success, right? Or success, you're attracting those people that are feeding you and validating those feelings. Social media. I'm sad today. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, okay, like, it's okay to feel feelings. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But as Bill Ostlund said, you're not authorized to sit in the pity party zone forever, you know?
Yeah, life's not fair, neither is death. There's a
Yeah.
bunch of great things. The quote I thought from that episode, which if people haven't listened to that, I really encourage them to. Bill is a wealth of knowledge, experience, and I mean, you want to talk about self leadership, guy who's lived it. I mean, he epitomizes it. But I thought of the coffin specifically and the hand coming out of the dirt saying, if only I'd had the proper training, if only I had built those habits, and or I didn't make excuses about, this is the hand I was dealt. There's always a way out, and you have to have multiple options. You have to have multiple plans. If you're just living your life on plan A, it's probably not a good way to go about it. If you're like plan A, plan B, I don't know. You might want to have a plan C, maybe D in there too.
But
Because
the end goal, right? The end goal can be the same. But
exactly.
how you get there is probably going to change. You know, Plan A, it may not. We might not be able to row the boat to the island and just burn the boat because there's no going back. Like, that may not work out real well for you. You know.
Yeah, there might be some storms out there when you're steering the ship. It might affect the trajectory of it, but it'll still get to its destination.
Yeah, 100%. Well, any last closing comments for this one right here?
No, just again, just kind of something to reflect on. I would say, that video we watched about, are you living in a coffin or are you living in a classroom? If you're listening to this, most definitely, I'm sure that you've experienced failure in your life, and if not, I'd love to meet you, and you can let us know how you've gone about it and figured it out, because I think that you could be you could make a lot of money doing that, and letting people know how you figured it out. But Jets, that you always just fall back. You don't you fall back to your systems you have in place. That the quote that's annoying is like you fall back to your lowest level of training. That's we laugh at that stuff, but it's true. And how you do that is you develop it through that, your trials and tribulations you've been through, the hardship that you've forced yourself to go to, the stuff when no one's watching. um, and and you're always a work in progress. So you might have that feeling that you've never arrived, but there's also, there's a difference between being complacent and being content. I'm a firm believer in that. And you don't have to be you don't have to be complacent to be content. You can find contentment in, how you go about your everyday, what kind of, friend you are, what kind of brother, husband, um, teammate you are. But that doesn't mean you have to be complacent as well. It's constant work in progress.
Yeah, I'm going to challenge people to look at, are they living in a coffin or a classroom? How can you face fear, and how can you accept change, adapt, and overcome, and work towards those goals that you want, and do it in an analog way? Write out the goal you want, where I want to be, where I am now, how do I get there? Like, you may not know the answer of how you get there, but there's so many resources, and I would tell people to reach out. Um, well, this was awesome, man. I think these things are gonna I want to keep doing these. I think these are gonna be really cool, and just like everyday conversations that we have, like on the phone, and regular people have. And I'm gonna ask people when this goes out, hey, please like it, share it, comment on it, rate on it, right? Help us out with the algorithm, tag it. we're just everyday people. They're just trying to get out there and help others. So
Yeah, and if there's
thank you.
something else that you'd like us to talk about too, like let us know, send us a direct message or comment on it, and something that we'd love to dive into. It's continuing to learn and continuing to talk on experiences that we've had that maybe will help other people who, have gone through something similar.
Yep. All right, cool. Well, we out.
See you next time.